Anthropic has just announced that Claude Code is bringing in over $130 million a year. It is officially the hottest AI tool for developers right now. Devs are cancelling their Cursor and Windsurf subscriptions just to switch to Claude Code. But here's the crazy part. Despite all that momentum, I still think Anthropic is missing out on a huge opportunity. How did they not bring this tool to iOS and Android? Now, you might be thinking, why the would I want to code on my phone? See, that's where you're wrong. Coding on your phone has always been a joke. The screen's too small, typing semicolons and brackets sucks, there's no real IDE, no terminal, no way to actually run code. Wait, where was I going with this? Oh yeah. But Claude Code changed all of that. And I want to prove it to you. So I gave myself 7 days without a team or budget. I've never even built an app before. Just me, Claude Code, and a challenge. Can I turn a $130 million dev tool into an iOS app in 1 week? And more importantly, can I use it to finally start coding from my iPhone using only AI? So let me show you what happened. There is no way it did that all in one try. I have no idea where to start, so naturally I asked Claude. And it turns out I have 2 options. I could either build this natively on Xcode using Swift, which I have to learn from scratch, or there's React Native, which is perfect because I've built so many websites in React before, so this is going to be a very familiar experience. And on top of that, we could even use Expo because it will let me test everything instantly on my iPhone and makes the deployment process way easier. So I just need to install Expo. I'm naming this app Omnicode. Now let's run the demo app on the iOS simulator. And boom, it's alive. Look how easy and quick the code changes are shown on the simulator. But wait, before we get too excited, we need a plan. So I whipped out my insane drawing skills to draw what I'd say is the best, most professional diagram I think I've ever seen. Now, this masterpiece has 2 sections. We've got the front end, which is what the user will see, and the back end, which is the behind the scenes magic that will run all of this. As soon as the user opens the app, they will be greeted by the landing page. And this will be a simple Omnicode heading and a login with GitHub button. This button will redirect the user to GitHub, where they're going to log in and agree to send their information back to us. If you're wondering why I picked GitHub instead of Apple or Google login, it's because GitHub will send us all the user's repositories too. So it makes things so much easier for the user to work on existing projects. The user will then select their project from the repo selector. We're going to clone that repo in the backend and store it locally on my computer. I promise this is safe. Now that the project is selected, the AI will ask them, how can I help you? And this is where the user can prompt it to build whatever it wants. The prompt goes directly to the Claude Code API. Yes, I'm going to be Claude Code with their own API. And the changes this AI makes are shown to the user as a Git diff. And once the user accepts these changes, we'll apply it to their locally stored repository. So yeah, very safe, very secure. What could possibly go wrong? Now that we're done with the boring stuff, let's reset this app and start building the landing page. As I was building this, I realized that React Native really is so natural to use for a web developer. Everything just clicked instantly. Well, until this happened. Why are these button styles not being applied? Wait, what? You can't add styles to React Native buttons? So, what does an amateur developer do when they don't understand how a programming language works? We head over to Reddit to find a UI library that does it for us. I found one that everyone loved and it shows my exact use case on their homepage. So, instead of installing it, I just copied their example snippet and created my own button component. I continued building the login page until I was happy with the result. And yes, I know we don't have a logo yet, but now we need to make the login button work. I chose Better Auth for this because it was insanely easy to set up. And what's great about it is you own all the code and the data locally, and it has a built-in GitHub integration. However, since we'll have to store the users locally, I also have to set up a database, and I'm going with Drizzle ORM. And finally, to connect these 2 tools, we'll need a backend, and that's where Elysia.js comes in. Elysia.js? Doesn't matter. Honestly, I highly recommend all of these libraries if you use TypeScript on the backend. They integrate so well together, and you'll have a fully typed system from the DB schemas to the API and the front end. Now, instead of building this manually like a 16th century, I had a great epiphany. Why don't I use Claude Code to build the Claude Code competitor? And wow, the progress from here was insane. It was speed running through the whole backend setup, connected the database and the GitHub integration for Better Auth. I literally had Netflix on one screen whilst Claude was writing my app on the other. I couldn't be any happier. So that's where day one ended. We managed to get the login screen coded, the GitHub auth working, and we also set up the database. So yeah, not bad for someone who started the day asking, how do I build an app? Day 2. We started off strong by designing the app screen on Figma for 2 main reasons. 1, I can't keep aimlessly coding the UI without a design. And more importantly, 2, I have a theory I want to test out. If I give Claude Code a screenshot of a design, could it theoretically copy that exact design in code? However, since yesterday we established I am not a designer, I'm going over to Vasel's V0 tool and telling it what I want to design and the theme to use. Then I use that as inspiration in Figma. So now I'm using AI to generate a design to give to an AI to generate the code. I'm not sure why I'm even needed here anymore. Okay, let's test out this hypothesis. So I'm going to screenshot the dashboard page and give it to Claude Code and let's see what it does. All right, let's test this out. So starting on the login screen, I'm going to log in with GitHub and wow, there is no way it did that all in one try. Now, a design is just pixels, so let's make it actually do something. So I added a GitHub controller to fetch the user's repositories and to clone that selected repository to a local workspace. I then told Claude Code to freestyle the repository selector, and again, I was so impressed by how well it matched my current theme. It even added the description, the number of stars, and the default branch, without me even telling it to. I feel like it's low-key trying to show off right now. And when I select a repo, you can see in the logs, we successfully cloned that project directly into my local workspace. Now, rinse and repeat, and we have ourselves a chat UI too. This one wasn't as clean. It took a couple more prompts, and it's still not as polished as the dashboard, but we'll get to that tomorrow. Let's look at what we've accomplished today. We designed all the screens in Figma, built the dashboard, project selector, chat screen foundation, and cloning the repo to a local workspace. So far, everything's just been front-end buttons and dashboards, but we actually need the AI agent to do something now. Specifically, we want the chat screen to send prompts to our backend, which then calls the Claude Code SDK, which then actually makes changes to the repo. It sounds simple, right? I started digging into the Claude Code documentation, and honestly, it looks surprisingly straightforward. So I built a backend controller to take the user's prompt, ship it off to Claude, and then return the result. Right now, we're not going to have any fancy streaming or live updates. I just want this to work. Okay, let's give it a quick test. Nice. We got a response back from the agent saying it will explore the repo structure, and we can see the time taken, the damage to my wallet, and the number of turns it took. However, I don't see the final result from it, even though I can see the logs in the terminal. So I added a way to temporarily store these logs from Claude Code so we can analyze what happened. I have a feeling it's because we've set a limit on the max number of turns, so the agent loop is stopped before it can finish the task. Like, imagine asking someone to write an essay, but telling them, oh, by the way, you can only use 3 sentences. Unfortunately, though, we'll have to cut today short because I have real work to go to. We have made some progress though. We now send the prompt to the Claude Code SDK and we show the response. Kinda. Tomorrow though, I'm determined to get this working end to end. Getting straight into day 4, I asked Claude Code to remove that max turns since I think that's what's causing the issue. I also asked it to add a selector for the different modes we can run the agent in. I did this because in regular mode, the agent will keep stopping to ask for permission to make changes. But I want to be able to use the auto accept mode so that it can just run endlessly. Also, having a model selector so I can switch to a cheaper LLM model is very handy. You can see here that I added some debug info just to figure out what's happening behind the scenes. But I'm not liking how the response is being displayed. This is Markdown, so we should render it as Markdown. Boom. Look how much nicer that looks now. All right, test number 2. Let's see if it can modify the README to include the structure of this repo. Executing anytime now. It seems to be stuck. So I looked into the workspace folder to see if it's made changes, but nothing. Oh, here we go. Let me open up the Markdown viewer for the README. You can see I added the whole repository structure in here with a bunch more information. We also have the response back on the app, so my hunch was right. Because look, it took 20 turns to complete this task. It also cost me 20 cents and took over a minute to complete the task. This is why when we add the live responses, it's going to be a much better experience, since we know it's actually doing something and not broken. Next up, I wanted a git diff screen so I could see exactly what changes have been made without having to dig into my local files. I found this really cool MCP that will allow Claude Code to communicate with Figma directly and fetch the designs and the CSS for it. I downloaded it and tried to set it up only to find that I have to pay a monthly subscription. So I'm gonna stick to my primitive ways and just screenshot the design and give it to Claude manually. All right, let's have a look at what it's done. So we can see the changes to the README, but I'm struggling to scroll to see all of it. The header also looks really weird, so let's fix that. There we go, much better. We can scroll and the header matches the design. Let's ask it to make more changes to that file and see what it looks like. Here we go. We can see it added some ASCII art at the bottom of the README. Wow, it's so nice to see this working. The final thing I want to implement today is the ability to create a pull request from these changes, so we can review them and merge them into the master branch. If we can get this done today, then this is going to be beyond my expectations for day 4. I honestly thought I'll be at this point in like day 6. I also want the branch name for this PR to include Omnicode in the name, so we can clearly differentiate it from the, regular human developers. Using plan mode, I tweaked Claude's plan until I thought it was perfect. I highly recommend doing this, by the way, because it saves you from a lot of sloppy AI outputs. Okay, testing time. Let's create a pull request. Okay, it says pull request created. Let's open it up. It's a little hard to see on the phone, so I'm going to use my browser. Let's go. We have the pull request with a proper title, branch name, and a note at the bottom that this was generated by Omnicode. However, the pull request description doesn't show any of the changes, so something wrong is happening here. The files changed does correctly show the changes we made. And with that, we've now completed all the steps in this diagram. So now what? Are we done? No, I still have to fix the chat UI design. So I did a quick experiment. I gave Claude, ChatGPT, and Gemini all the same instructions to improve the design and then see what they come up with. Gemini was awful. It literally just gave me a regular messaging app design. The Claude one was really nice, actually, but it didn't really match the theme that I was going for. ChatGPT one was my favorite though. But before I was able to do anything, we ran into the usage limits again. I guess that's the end for today. We've honestly accomplished a lot, so I can't even be mad. But tomorrow, we're going to be entering the matrix. So yesterday, we ended on a cliffhanger with the UI revamp. So today, first thing we have to do is clean that up. The completed executions are now marked in green. The bottom control section finally matches the design, and the top navigation is looking sleek. For now, this is great. We can leave it like this. Next, I want to fix the PR description bug. So when Omnicode creates a pull request, it should call another LLM to summarize the actual code changes. Then after that, we can reset the chat, return to master, and move on. And done. Great. Now, this is the part that's going to get a bit inception-y.
Each aspect, but sometimes it feels like it's almost creating itself, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I'm going to clone the Omnicode repo in Omnicode, and I'm going to try to tell it to make changes to itself. If this works, this is going to be huge. The app will just build itself. The task I'm going to give it is to make the voice button on the chat screen actually listen to my voice, and then convert that speech into a text prompt. Here's the funny thing, even I don't know how to build this. So if Omnicode pulls this off, then I've basically just replaced myself. And since we don't have live streaming yet, I peeked into the workspace to see what it was doing. I can see it added a voice recording hook and made some changes to the chat input component. We've got the results back in the app now, and it shows all the features and technical implementation of this feature. The Git diff screen also shows us all the changes, which is great. Time to create the pull request. It seems like the LLM call did work, but we didn't give it the code changes. So it's just a useless description right now that still needs to be fixed. Omnicode made a lot of changes though. So I'm going to check out the branch and see if this actually works. I'm currently seeing some warnings about a deprecated package. So let's quickly swap that out. And moment of truth. Hello. Wow, this works. That's insane. But there's still a problem. The experience still feels broken without live streaming. I think watching Omnicode think in real time is going to be a game changer. Day 6 was rough. After the last couple days of crazy progress, today I felt like just smashing my head against the wall. I started the morning determined to finally fix streaming, but instead all I got was a bunch of WebSocket errors and auth failures. The problem is that handling authentication for sockets is very different to the regular REST APIs. And to make things even worse, oh no, not this again. At this point, I had no choice. I had to do something about these Claude Code credits. So I upgraded to Claude Code's $100 monthly plan. And I know it's painful, but it unlocked higher limits and the Claude 4.1 Opus model, which is their most powerful one yet. I genuinely think this will be worth it. Okay, so I told the new model to try fix the streaming issue. Now let's test it. There we go. It fixed it on the first try, except there was a catch. It only worked without authentication. As soon as I added the auth back in, boom, same errors again. The thing is, I can understand why it's struggling because it has to understand and link so many libraries together. Better auth with ElizaJS, with WebSockets, and Expo as well. There's a lot of moving parts here. The only solution I can think of right now is for me to do this manually. And I can't believe I have to actually read the docs and write the code myself. I know you guys love these diagrams, so let me explain how we're going to fix this. So we have the app and we've got the server. The app will start by asking the server for a one-time token. The server then generates this token for the user and returns it back to the app. The app will then connect to the WebSocket using that token, and the server acknowledges that connection. Now the user is authenticated. Now, whenever a user sends a prompt to the server runs the Claude Code SDK for that user's repository. And on every loop or action from the SDK, we can send a WebSocket message to the app to show live updates on the chat screen. I've currently completed the one-time token generation and the WebSocket connection. So all I have left is to implement that last section for sending the updates back to the app. I think Claude Code should be able to handle this. And this time it worked. Look at this pure magic. I told you streaming will make this app so much better, but we're not done quite yet. Tomorrow is the final day. So let's see if we can get Omnicode to a place where it's not just a demo, but something I can actually use day to day to get real work done. Day 7, the final day. I've put this off the whole week. So before the final test, we need to do one thing. We need an app icon. So I asked ChatGPT to create an icon based on a cartoon mascot that has coding brackets for the eyes and that matches my earthy/desert tones. And honestly, I really liked what he came up with. So I went ahead and used it. But now this is it, the end-to-end test. Let's open the app. Log in with GitHub. Continue. All right, we're logged in. There's my name, no recent projects. Now we can clone a repo. Here's a list of all the repos that are available to me. Let's open up Omnicode. As you can see here, it's cloning. Project shows up. All right, let's try out the voice mode. Allow. Can you build a dark mode/light mode toggle for this app? Okay, let's try this again. Okay, second try. Updated the icon. Open up the app. Clone the repo. All right. So now we can tell it. Yeah, we have to allow this again. Can you implement a dark mode/light mode toggle? Hopefully it actually works this time. I've added some credits, so that should fix it. Nice. We've got the auto scroll. I could hide some of these messages as well, since they're not necessary. Wait, hold on a minute. Omnicode is updating its actual live code instead of the cloned workspace. It somehow managed to escape the workspace folder and edit its own live code. You can see here, the first thing it did was starting from the repo folder. It kept crawling up the folder tree until it hit the live code. This is kind of scary because right now it can go anywhere on my computer and change things. So we have to use Docker to clone the repo instead of locally. And with Docker, we can isolate each repo in its own container, run Claude Code inside safely, and then stream everything back without risking the rest of my machine. The good side, however, is on the dashboard, you can see it actually did implement a dark mode toggle. It doesn't fully work for some elements, but it's a great start. I gave all the context to Claude Code and it made a solid plan. This, however, is going to be a huge task since you have to create the image, run the Docker container specifically for that user's repo, run Claude Code SDK in there, and we have to figure out how to stream it back to the server. Okay, so we created the Docker image and container and then it ran some tests. So I'm going to tell it to start phase 2. Okay, so I just tested it and it seems like it clones the repo properly. So you can see it created the new container, if I can show you here, and the Omnicode user and then the user ID. Like you can see, this is the repo. This is inside the Docker container. And Now it shows up in my recent project. Now we have to add the communication between the server and the Docker container. Let's test this out. So I open the app. You can see we've got a cool splash screen now. Clone a random repo. What is this repo about? Read every file. Look at this. We can now see every action it does live, and we have the final result. Okay, time for the final test. Third time's the charm. I'm going to clone the Omnicode repo. And can you build a dark mode / light mode toggle in the dashboard? Man, look at how beautiful this app is. We can even see the to-do list of the agent getting ticked off as it goes. It's going to take me a minute though, so let me speed this up. And it's done. Let's look at the change files. It's added a theme to the app. This looks good. Let's create a pull request. All right, the PR description looks good. And the file changes also look good. So let's go ahead and check out this branch to see the changes it made. And here it is, a fully functioning dark mode toggle on the dashboard. This works so well. Every element actually switches to the light mode, even the repo selector. The chat UI needs some fixing, which can be done using one more prompt on Omnicode, but the model and the run mode selectors are light mode, and even the Git diff screen. This was a massive success. In 7 days, with no prior app experience, no co-founder, and no budget except the $100 Claude Code plan, but we're going to ignore that, I built Omnicode, and it's a real working iOS IDE, completely powered by Claude Code. Yeah, the chat UI still needs a few tweaks, but here's the point. AI has changed what's possible. If I can go from idea to prototype to reality in 1 week, then so can you. And I even did this with a full-time job on the side. So stop doom scrolling and actually start building something. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. I'd really appreciate that. Also, if you have any suggestions for Omnicode, then drop them down in the comment section. And if you want to see me make this app production ready and deploy it to the App Store so you can use it, then please let me know. Thank you for watching and peace.